I used to believe silence was a virtue. That if I just kept moving, woke up, bathed her, cooked the meals, folded the laundry, administered the medication, then maybe everything would stay intact. Maybe he'd stay. Maybe this house would still feel like home. But I learned that silence, when stretched too thin, eventually starts to scream. My name's Madeline. I married Jeff 4 years ago. He was a widower, and I knew he came with history, a daughter who hadn't walked since the accident that took her mother. I stepped into that role with open arms. Everyone said I was strong. She's a saint, they'd whisper behind my back at PTA meetings or block parties. So lucky to find love again after what he went through. Lucky. That word clung to me like static. They didn't see the days that bled into nights where I sat by Ellie's bedside, coaxing her to swallow mashed peas, wiping the drool from her chin as her father stayed out working late. They didn't hear her cries during therapy. They didn't feel the way my spine ached from lifting her in and out of the bath. They didn't see the resentment that collected like dust in the corners of my soul. Last Tuesday, just after 8 p.m., Jeff came in, dropped his keys with that casual clink on the counter, and said, "I need a break." No preamble. No apology. He said he was going to Paris. Paris. Alone. I didn't say anything at first. Just nodded slowly, walked to the sink, and washed my hands. I could still smell antiseptic lotion from earlier that day. His tone had been breezy, like someone mentioning they'd booked a tea time. But something inside me twisted. Later that night, as I cleaned out the living room drawer looking for Ellie's insurance card, I found the tickets. 2 of them. One name I knew. The other? Angela Klein. Angela. His friend from accounting who always laughed a little too loud at his jokes. My fingers trembled, but not from heartbreak. No, not yet. It was something colder than that. Numbness. I confronted him before breakfast. No raised voice, no accusation. Just held out the tickets across the counter while he scrolled through his phone. He didn't even flinch. Just looked up and said, "I deserve happiness too, Madeline." That's when the air changed. He went on, calmly, like he was explaining a budget. "You're better at taking care of her anyway. She responds to you. And you know how hard it's been for me losing her mom, working nonstop, being stuck." I didn't interrupt. I didn't cry. I stood there in my slippers and bathrobe, listening to a man justify his betrayal like it was a logical decision. He made it sound like I owed this to him. Like caring for his child was my job. Like loving him meant cleaning up after the wreckage he left behind. Sometimes, I remember thinking, the person you trust most doesn't stab you. They just press the knife in and call it love. By the time the sun moved higher in the sky, I was questioning everything. Was I being selfish? Was he right? Had I taken on too much and expected too little in return? I sat in Ellie's room that afternoon, stroking her hair as she slept, and remembered the first time she let me hold her hand. That small act of trust. It took months to earn. And now, somehow, I had become her nurse, her schedule manager, her everything except her mother. That night, he poured himself a glass of whiskey, sat in the armchair, and looked at me like he was explaining tax returns. "It's your duty, not mine. I've already done my part. I buried her mother." That sentence burned. He spoke as if he'd completed some noble quest, and now it was my turn to carry the weight. As if grief could be handed off like a baton. As if burying her was an act that somehow bought him freedom from the child she left behind. And for a moment, I almost believed him. Because that's the cruelty of it. When someone chips away at you long enough, you start sanding yourself down to fit their shape. I remembered holidays spent alone with Ellie while he traveled for work. Remembered the anniversary dinner I cooked while he texted under the table. Remembered every little compromise that slowly bled me dry. There's a script women like me get handed in America. Be nurturing. Be grateful. Be quiet. Especially if you're the second wife. Especially if there's a child involved. Society tells you to be the glue that holds the family together, even if you're crumbling. I didn't scream when he left for the airport. I didn't cry or beg. I stood at the window and watched his car pull away. The suitcase he packed so neatly was the same one we'd used on our honeymoon. I didn't even blink. They say women snap, I whispered to myself as the taillights disappeared into the dusk. But what they don't see is the 1,000 times we bend before we break. Ellie stirred. I walked into her room, kissed her on the forehead, and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Then I turned to the window. The sky was a dusky violet, the kind that made you feel like anything was possible or maybe nothing was. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to wonder, what if I just left? The morning after Jeff left, I didn't wake up so much as I got up. There's a difference. You don't rise with purpose, your body just moves because it has to. I slipped out of bed, the sheets still faintly holding his scent. I didn't breathe too deep. I bathed Logan first. The warm water helped her relax, but I kept my focus sharp, mechanical. Shampoo. Rinse. Dry. Stretch her arms. Straighten her knees. Feed her oatmeal. Wipe the dribble. Repeat. All without saying a word. Not to her. Not to myself. Silence had moved in, and for once, I didn't try to chase it out. I skipped breakfast. Just poured myself lukewarm coffee and stared at the morning show without hearing a single word. The house was still. Too still. The kind of quiet that made the air thick. My eyes caught the packed suitcase he left by the door, only his things. Not a single item for Logan. Not one. No mention of her care, no check-in plans. Just his cologne, his cufflinks, his passport. Don't make this dramatic, he had said, smiling like a man on his way to a golf trip. It's just a trip. Right. Just a trip. Like our vows were just words. Like this family was just a phase. Later, I found myself in the hallway, folding laundry. One of his t-shirts still smelled faintly of smoke from the fire pit last week. That night, he'd held my waist while laughing at something Logan had babbled from her chair. I pressed the shirt to my face, then tossed it in the basket. That's when I heard the buzz. It came from the end table in the den. His tablet. I almost ignored it, but the second buzz made me glance over. And that's when it lit up. Don't forget to use the red tie. It matches your passport photo. XO, Paris Queen V. My breath hitched. I didn't blink. Vivian. I didn't need to guess. That V didn't stand for vague. It was her. I'd know her tone anywhere, too playful, too confident. The woman who called me sweetheart at the charity gala like she was patting a dog. I didn't throw the tablet. I wanted to. My hands tightened around it like they might snap the frame in half. But I didn't. I just stared at the screen until it faded to black. If anger was strength, I muttered, I could lift this damn house. I tapped the screen again. Took a screenshot of the message. Saved it to a private folder. First piece of evidence. Americans love to say, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." But they forget, some women don't burn. They simmer. I stood there for a long minute, then slid the tablet back where I found it. The moment passed, but it didn't go away. It just got buried. And that's more dangerous. Hours later, after I tucked Logan in for a nap, I walked into the guest room. Jeff's old briefcase was still there, half open. I started going through it, calmly. Found a receipt from the airport lounge. 2 entries. 2 glasses of champagne. A handwritten note from Vivian, "Can't wait to watch you sleep on the plane, love." Another folder revealed his Paris hotel reservation. Not under our usual name. Not even under his full name. Just J. Connors. Sly. Credit card charges, Maison Bluey Spa, Louvre Bistro, Gallery Amour. So, they weren't hiding. They were living. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down and opened my notebook, the same one I used to track Logan's therapy schedule. Now it held a new purpose. I made lists. Evidence. Inconsistencies. Lies. I thought back to the first time I met Vivian. She had been in a green dress that showed too much shoulder for the event. She complimented my earrings, then said how brave I was for taking care of someone else's child. She didn't mean it as praise. She meant it as a label. As a warning. Brave. That word again. So often thrown at women who are left to clean up messes they didn't make. I flipped the page. I wouldn't call Jeff. Not yet. Let them play out their fantasy. Let them think I was sitting here, broken. I wanted to see what else would slip through. Maybe it was time to call Sarah, my old college roommate turned lawyer in DC. We hadn't spoken in a while. But she always said, "Call me when you're ready to stop being nice." I wasn't ready yet. But I was close. Later that evening, I sat across from Logan. She wasn't eating much, but I fed her slowly, spoon by spoon. Her eyes followed me in a way they hadn't before. More alert. Like she knew. "Sweetheart," I whispered, brushing her hair back, "I don't know what's coming. But I promise you, this ends with us winning." And then, just before midnight, the doorbell rang. The house was still dark when the doorbell rang. I checked the clock on the microwave, 8:32 a.m. Logan had barely stirred in her bed, and I hadn't changed out of my pajamas. My hair was tied up messily with yesterday's hair tie, and my face was puffy from a night of zero sleep. I hesitated at the door, unsure whether to answer. But something in the knock, firm, measured, not impatient, told me this wasn't a neighbor borrowing sugar. I opened it to find a woman in a navy blazer holding a leather binder. Her voice was polite, clipped. "Good morning. Ms. Connors? I'm Ms. Pennington with Child Protective Services. We received a report and I'm here for a wellness check." I blinked. The air thinned. "A report?" My voice cracked on the second word. What kind of report?" She stepped in without waiting for an invitation, scanning the living room with eyes that didn't miss a thing. "Just a standard wellness check." Someone expressed concern about possible neglect in the home. Neglect. The word echoed even after she'd said more. I didn't hear the rest right away. My ears were rushing like I'd gone underwater. I managed to nod and shut the door behind her. My palms were slick. My stomach knotted itself tight as I guided her toward the kitchen, praying Logan didn't cry or spit up or show any sign of anything less than perfect. My thoughts swirled, Vivian. It had to be her. Or Graham. This wasn't random. This was planned. In America, I thought, you don't need enemies when your family files the paperwork. Miss Pennington walked with intent, opening drawers, peering in the fridge, noting everything in her little notepad. She asked about Logan's medications. I retrieved the bottles from the cabinet, lined them up on the counter. She asked about physical therapy, who administered it, when it was scheduled. I showed her the printed plan from the clinic. When she asked where Logan's father was, I hesitated. He's in Paris for work, I answered. She looked up slowly, pen paused mid-sentence. Paris? For a conference, I added quickly. She didn't press further, but the look said enough. I felt like I was shrinking under her gaze, even though I had nothing to hide. That's what humiliation does. It shows up not because you're guilty, but because you know someone is watching you while you're at your weakest. We moved to Logan's room. She lay in her bed, awake now, quiet. Ms. Pennington stood by the doorway. I walked to Logan's side, knelt down, and took her hand gently in mine. Squeeze if you're okay, I whispered. There was a beat. Then, a slow, steady press against my fingers. She's nonverbal? Ms. Pennington asked. Yes. But she understands everything. She made another note. Back in the hallway, Ms. Pennington finally spoke again. The report claimed that Logan had been left alone for extended periods. Unattended. My chest burned. Not because I was confused, but because I wasn't. I remembered it now. A week ago. Vivian had shown up out of nowhere with a tote bag of extra supplies, smiling too wide, insisting I go run errands while she stayed with Logan for a bit. I had been tired. So tired. She even told me, you deserve a break. Take your time. God. I actually believed her. She wasn't here to help, I realized. She was here to frame. This isn't an official investigation at this point, Ms. Pennington said. But I strongly advise you not to leave her unattended. Especially now. Her words landed like a slap. She thanked me with a tone too flat to be grateful, and walked out. I stood at the door after she left, hands still on the knob. My coffee had gone cold on the kitchen counter. I didn't sit right away. I just stared at that folded blanket on the couch, the one Vivian had used when she played the guest of Goodwill. Every fiber in me wanted to scream. But I didn't. I sat down instead. Opened my laptop. I wasn't looking to vent. I wasn't posting a cryptic quote. I started researching custody law. Guardianship rights. How to protect a stepchild when the biological parent goes rogue. They wanted to play legal games? Fine. I'd learn every rule. I woke up on the couch, still in the gown from the gala. It clung to my skin like old regret. I hadn't even made it to the bedroom. Logan's soft breathing echoed from the baby monitor. She was calm. Unaware. The innocence in her world felt like a slap in mine. I sat up slowly, joints aching. Last night was a parade of fake smiles and cold stares. Graham had barely looked at me, except for that brief moment when I caught his eyes across the ballroom, and he looked right through me. Not angry. Not ashamed. Just empty. That hollowness had stuck with me. I grabbed a notebook, flipped to a clean page, and started writing. Not journaling in the emotional sense, documenting. Dates. Incidents. Words. Lies. Disappearances. Vivian's visits. The wellness check. Every passive-aggressive slight dressed up as concern. I was done doubting myself. I sent Damon a quick text, "Let's move forward. I'm ready for the consultation." As I sipped cold coffee, Maya Angelou's words surfaced in my mind like a warning I had ignored too long. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Late afternoon, while looking for Logan's therapy schedule, I opened the drawer in Graham's study. A strange click echoed behind me, barely audible. I paused, holding still. Not paranoia. Something mechanical. I scanned the room. Then followed the sound to a shelf lined with dusty hardbacks. I crouched, ran my hand behind a thick leather-bound volume, and felt it, wires. A small pinhole in the wood. Tucked into the base of a decorative lamp, nearly invisible. A microphone. I didn't scream. Didn't touch it. My breath caught and held. So. That's how he played. He hadn't just walked out. He'd stayed behind, in the walls. In the wiring. Monitoring. Collecting. Planning. I stood up slowly, walked out of the room like I hadn't seen a thing. Back in the kitchen, I picked up a spoon and stirred Logan's food while speaking softly, loud enough for the microphone. "I'm thinking of going to visit my sister in North Carolina. Just a short trip," I said, like it was an afterthought. Then paused. Just long enough. I glanced at Logan. She didn't blink. Just watched me. Like she always did. That night, I repeated the lie in front of the fridge. And again while folding laundry. Not desperate. Just floating it out there. By mid-morning the next day, my phone buzzed. From Graham, "Don't leave the state. It's not safe for Logan." I let out a slow, silent laugh. Gotcha. I took a screenshot. Then another of the microphone in the study. Attached both in an email to Damon. Subject, insurance. This wasn't new. Years ago, Graham had asked me to install a GPS tracker on my phone. Just in case of emergencies, he'd said. Later, I found out he'd been monitoring my location for months. When I confronted him, he shrugged. "I worry. That's what love does." No. That wasn't love. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a well-mannered witness. That night, after Logan had fallen asleep, I sat in the living room. The lamp was on, casting a soft glow over the floor. I faced the direction of the study, subtle. Calm. I knew he might be watching. Listening. Good. I leaned forward, spoke just above a whisper. "We're not victims, baby. We're witnesses. And witnesses talk." I pulled the legal folder toward me, opened to the page I had marked. Ran my finger under a name written in neat black ink, Estelle Briggs. The former nanny. The one who quit without warning. The one who knew more than she ever said. I stared at that name for a long time. I just have to find her before they do. It had been 2 years since Estelle left. No goodbye note, no explanation, just gone. But I never forgot the way she hugged Logan that last morning, whispering something I barely caught, "He needs someone to see him." Now I was following a quiet road out toward Culpeper, damp from overnight rain. Damon's guy had tracked her down to a bakery in town. Part-time work, low profile. I drove without music, letting the silence stir up questions I'd been avoiding. When I pulled into the small gravel lot outside the bakery, my heart picked up. I didn't know if she'd even talk to me. Or worse, what if she said nothing had happened? I stepped in, the bell above the door giving a dull ring. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon clung to the warm air. She was wiping down a table near the window. Her back to me. Then she turned. She froze. Then smiled, slow and tired. "Took you long enough," she said. We sat in the corner by the window, 2 mugs of chamomile tea between us. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured honey into hers. I could tell she'd aged, like life had stopped being polite. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," she began. "I left because I couldn't stay. I didn't push. I just waited." She glanced around, leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw him yelling at Logan. It wasn't discipline. It was rage. I tried to calm him down, but he turned it on me." I swallowed hard. "And then?" "He told me I was overstepping. That I was just hired help. The next day, Vivian shows up, tells me they're changing care plans. Said I was too emotionally attached." She reached into her bag. Slid over a small, cloth-covered notebook. I stared at it for a moment, then slowly opened the cover. Her handwriting, page after page. Dates. Observations. Graham's episodes. Logan's regressions. One entry detailed Vivian sleeping over in the guest room multiple nights a week. Another? A conversation overheard through a cracked door. Vivian said, and I quote, "Once the burden is gone, you two can start clean." I looked up. She was talking about Logan. Estelle nodded, her lips pressed tight. I closed the journal. "Would you testify?" She hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the front counter. "I'd need protection. I don't trust what he's capable of anymore." "You'll have it," I said, meaning every word. By the time I got back in the car, the rain had started again. I called Damon from the driver's seat, voice low. "I've got something. I'm sending it now." I took pictures of the most damning pages, texted them over. His response came quickly, "This is serious. But not enough on its own. We need a complete narrative." I hung up, turned the engine off, and sat with my hands on the wheel. Breathing through the rage. The lies. The calculated erasure of truth. When I got home, Logan was napping. I scanned the entire journal, made digital copies, and saved one on a flash drive I tucked deep into his toy bin, beneath a stuffed elephant. Then I opened a new folder on my computer, Custody Narrative. Started documenting everything, his feeding routines, medication logs, sleep cycles. I noted every time he blinked at a sound, turned at my voice, held my hand longer than expected. I wasn't just his mother anymore. I was becoming his advocate. "If I'm just a ghost in their version of this family," I whispered into the quiet room, "I'll haunt them with the truth." Later that night, Logan was sitting on the floor by the couch, flipping pages in a board book. I placed the journal next to me, intending to hide it after he went to sleep. But he reached out and placed his hand on it. Not understanding, not reading. Just resting his palm there, steady. As if something in him recognized it mattered. I looked at him, leaned forward, and kissed his forehead. "You don't need to speak, baby. I'll speak enough for both of us." I met Damon at a quiet cafe just after 6. The daylight was fading, and the rain from earlier left little puddles on the sidewalk. We sat across from each other, a stack of journals, flash drives, and printed photos between us. The material, Estelle's secret journal, images of Graham and Vivian in Paris, the hidden microphone I found in the study lamp. Damon was composed, yet the crease between his brow told me the stakes were higher than I'd allowed myself to admit. "This isn't just about Logan anymore," he said softly. "It's about your safety." I nodded. My throat went dry, but I kept my voice steady. We sorted the evidence, backed it up to a secure cloud, labeled every file. I wrote my affidavit, clear, plain, unwavering. No pity party. Just fact, then feeling. Damon reminded me one last time, they'll try to paint you unstable or vindictive. Don't react. Document everything. I recorded a private message for Logan, just in case. The calm felt fragile, like the quiet right before a summer storm sweeps in. Back at the house after dusk, I almost didn't answer the door. The knock was at 7:30. He wore no uniform. No logo. Just a man holding a sealed envelope. The room was dimly lit, Logan's soft breathing coming from his bedroom down the hall. I took the envelope, slid it onto the counter. Inside was a typed letter, and signed. The words cut clean through the warm lamplight, "Stop pushing. Or Logan's medical needs will be reevaluated." No signature, no return address. But I knew. I scanned the text with shaking hands, held the document up in the glow of the kitchen light, and felt the rage begin to sharpen inside me. I photographed the letter, then burned the paper in the fireplace. Just a flicker. Nothing left behind, no trace for him to deny. That night I triple-locked the doors. I dragged my sleeping bag into Logan's room, lay on the floor beside him, one hand on his crib and the other on my phone. The quiet that night wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of waiting. The next morning I rehearsed every line I might say in court. My voice. My posture. My pauses. I didn't want to be seen as desperate or broken, I wanted to be heard as real. Logan sensed the shift. He held my hand longer in therapy. His gaze stayed on me without flickering. Mrs. Delgado, our neighbor, stopped by and told me her son had walked into silence when no one saw the warning signs. She squeezed my hand and offered to sit in court when the time came. I packed a small bag, Logan's medications, backup clothes, a flash drive labeled evidence. If I had to leave tonight, I'd be ready. My phone rang, it was Graham. He said he'd let me know what time the hearing was, with a voice so calm it made my skin crawl. I didn't answer. But I took a screenshot and sent it to Damon. Then I filed an anonymous police report about the letter. That evening, I sat next to Logan in his room. He was snug under the blanket, breathing evenly. I whispered into the quiet, "No matter what happens, I'll never let them erase you." The lights outside turned red and orange with the setting sun, the shadows stretching across his wall. 2 days until court. 2 days until everything changes. The calm before the storm was here, and I was ready. I stepped out of the car and paused before walking into the courthouse. Navy dress, low heels, hair pulled back. Nothing flashy, nothing emotional. I needed to look steady. I needed to be steady. Damon was already inside, waiting at the security line. He handed me a warm coffee, no small talk, just a quiet nod. Today isn't about emotions. It's about facts. I repeated those words like a shield. Graham strolled in 20 minutes late, smirking like he was walking into a fundraiser, not a legal battle. No Vivian in sight. That unsettled me. I scanned the courtroom. 3 lawyers surrounded Graham. On my side? Just Damon. But he stood straighter than all of them. The judge entered, a woman with steel-gray hair and the look of someone who didn't tolerate rehearsed charm. I sat up a little taller. Maybe, just maybe, someone in that room would actually see us. Graham's legal team wasted no time. Their strategy? Paint me as unstable, emotional, a woman who couldn't handle the weight of her child's needs. They pulled therapy notes from when I was sleep-deprived, hollowed out by postpartum depression. They framed me as clinically detached. I didn't flinch. Damon leaned in. "They're digging their own hole," he whispered. Still, my heart beat against my ribs like a warning drum. Then they accused me of weaponizing Logan, twisting his care to punish Graham. That nearly broke my silence, but I held my breath. Damon stood and began presenting our evidence: Estelle's dated journal entries, photographs of Graham and Vivian's Paris getaway during Logan's hospitalization, surveillance shots outside our home. Then, Vivian walked in. She didn't expect to be called. Damon had subpoenaed her last night. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled the cord. She tried to leave. The judge called for a recess. When court resumed, Vivian sat under oath, her voice trembling behind practiced poise. Damon didn't rush. He led her through it, gentle at first, then sharper. "Were you romantically involved with Mr. Sterling during his marriage?" She blinked, hesitated. Damon slid forward a hotel receipt. Her Instagram photo at the same hotel. A voice memo. Her shoulders slumped. "Yes," she muttered. But it didn't stop there. Damon asked about Logan, specifically if she'd ever heard Graham speak of institutionalizing him. Vivian froze, then admitted it. Graham had once called Logan a burden and said it would be cleaner if professionals handled him. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Graham's team scrambled. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Sterling, please rise." His confidence shattered on the way up. Damon then read parts of my affidavit, measured, truthful, quietly devastating. I stood only when I had to. Looked the judge in the eye. "My son isn't leverage. He's a life." After a long silence, the judge spoke. "A 90-day freeze on all custody decisions. Logan would stay with me while a full investigation began." It wasn't over, but it was a breath. Outside, the air was heavier with the press waiting. Damon kept close. "They'll try something before the 90 days are up," I said. He nodded, already thinking 10 steps ahead. We stay ahead. That afternoon, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just walked to the car, gripped the wheel, and whispered to myself, "This isn't over." But neither am I. The cabin sits quiet in the early morning, cradled by trees that don't care about courts, custody, or who did what to whom. I step outside barefoot, damp grass underfoot, and breathe in pine and wood smoke like their medicine. This isn't retreat. It's restoration. The silence here doesn't scream, it listens. The fire crackles low inside. Logan still sleeps, curled in his blanket, his brow smooth for once. Damon called last night, said we bought time, but more hearings are ahead. I thanked him, told him not to worry. I think he heard something different in my voice. Something steadier. Logan has changed. He flinches less. He hums sometimes, low and tuneless, but it's sound. I play music while I cook, and he watches the ceiling like it's moving with the rhythm. I'm not rushing anymore. Meals are simple. I drink my tea hot. I even started reading again, not to escape, but to return. Peace isn't the absence of chaos, I told myself yesterday. It's the presence of purpose. I believe that now. He grips my hand while I read to him, really grips it. That's new. I set down the book and squeeze back, not too hard. His eyes meet mine, just for a second, like he's testing the world again. I enrolled him in a small therapy group nearby, nothing clinical, just play, music, movement. He laughed 2 days ago. Not a full belly laugh, but a stuttering one when a puppy licked his toes. I dropped the plate I was holding. Shattered. Then I cried. I cried hard. I keep a letter from Estelle taped inside the mirror frame, retired now, somewhere sunny, said she's proud of me. That word, proud, it means more than she knows. I met a woman named Lena who runs the bookstore down the road. She invited me to a local storytelling night. I said no, then changed my mind an hour before it started. I stood in that room and read a short piece about being a mother who learns to listen in silence. No names, just truth. Some people cried. No applause, just nods. That was enough. I felt heard for the first time in years. This morning, I zip Logan's coat as I hum a lullaby I haven't sung since the hospital days. He leans into me. Then, from somewhere deep inside him, I hear it. Me, Millie. My name. My knees give out. I fall to the floor, not from pain, just shock. Say it again, I whisper, not breathing. He tries, scrunches his brow, then says it clearer, Millie. I cradle his face. He smiles. Not wide, not exaggerated, just real. My name was his first word. Not mom, not help, not please. Mine. I hit record. Sent it to Damon. He responded with one word, victory. I sat with that word a long time. Not just his victory. Mine. I didn't just fight for Logan, I rebuilt myself. Quietly, stubbornly, stone by stone. This afternoon, I planted daffodils outside the window. The soil was cold, but I didn't mind. Daffodils survive frost. They bloom anyway. We'll be back in court next month. But the fear isn't there anymore. Graham has no tether to me now, not legal, not emotional, not spiritual. I zip Logan's coat again, same motion, but this time we're not escaping anything. We're moving toward something. Something ours. The cabin sits quiet in the early morning, cradled by trees that don't care about courts, custody, or who did what to whom. I step outside barefoot, damp grass underfoot, and breathe in pine and wood smoke like their medicine. This isn't retreat. It's restoration. The silence here doesn't scream, it listens. The fire crackles low inside. Logan still sleeps, curled in his blanket, his brow smooth for once. Damon called last night, said we bought time, but more hearings are ahead. I thanked him, told him not to worry. I think he heard something different in my voice. Something steadier. Logan has changed. He flinches less. He hums sometimes, low and tuneless, but it's sound. I play music while I cook, and he watches the ceiling like it's moving with the rhythm. I'm not rushing anymore. Meals are simple. I drink my tea hot. I even started reading again, not to escape, but to return. Peace isn't the absence of chaos, I told myself yesterday. It's the presence of purpose. I believe that now. He grips my hand while I read to him, really grips it. That's new. I set down the book and squeeze back, not too hard. His eyes meet mine, just for a second, like he's testing the world again. I enrolled him in a small therapy group nearby, nothing clinical, just play, music, movement. He laughed 2 days ago. Not a full belly laugh, but a stuttering one when a puppy licked his toes. I dropped the plate I was holding. Shattered. Then I cried. I cried hard. I keep a letter from Estelle taped inside the mirror frame, retired now, somewhere sunny, said she's proud of me. That word, proud, it means more than she knows. I met a woman named Lena who runs the bookstore down the road. She invited me to a local storytelling night. I said no, then changed my mind an hour before it started. I stood in that room and read a short piece about being a mother who learns to listen in silence. No names, just truth. Some people cried. No applause, just nods. That was enough. I felt heard for the first time in years. This morning, I zip Logan's coat as I hum a lullaby I haven't sung since the hospital days. He leans into me. Then, from somewhere deep inside him, I hear it. Me, Millie. My name. My knees give out. I fall to the floor, not from pain, just shock. Say it again, I whisper, not breathing. He tries, scrunches his brow, then says it clearer, Millie. I cradle his face. He smiles. Not wide, not exaggerated, just real. My name was his first word. Not mom, not help, not please. Mine. I hit record. Sent it to Damon. He responded with one word, victory. I sat with that word a long time. Not just his victory. Mine. I didn't just fight for Logan, I rebuilt myself. Quietly, stubbornly, stone by stone. This afternoon, I planted daffodils outside the window. The soil was cold, but I didn't mind. Daffodils survive frost. They bloom anyway. We'll be back in court next month. But the fear isn't there anymore. Graham has no tether to me now, not legal, not emotional, not spiritual. I zip Logan's coat again, same motion, but this time we're not escaping anything. We're moving toward something. Something ours.